Hey y'all, in today's video I made some cedar garden boxes. I used some slightly unusual materials, so I'm going to explain why I chose the materials I chose before I show you the materials I chose and explain to you how to build the garden boxes themselves. My first thought was to use pressure treated lumber. This way the moisture from the soil would not deteriorate the lumber. But pressure treated lumber is treated with a chemical, and I did not want that chemical to go into the vegetables that are planted in the garden. A lot of people would use just regular 2x6s. I did not want to use regular 2x6s because I knew that they would deteriorate pretty quickly unless I painted them, and I did not want to paint them. I also did not want to use steel or concrete cinder blocks because I just did not like the aesthetic. Cedar 2x6s are the obvious first choice, but they are very expensive. It would have cost me around $750 just for the cedar to build these garden boxes, so I decided to look for a cheaper option. That's when I found cedar fence pickets. Using cedar fence pickets as the body of my garden boxes and cedar 2x4s as the ribs brought the cost down to around $250 for both boxes, and so that's what I decided to go with. Alright, now it's time for me to show you the materials I chose. For each garden box, I used 27 5.5 inch wide by 6 foot long fence pickets, and I also used 2.5 8 foot long cedar 2x4s. Alright, so here's the tools I used. I have an 18 gauge nail gun with 1 inch long nails, an impact driver, a drill, a pocket hole jig, 2 inch and 2.5 inch long deck screws, and a circular saw. I didn't use a circular saw, I used a miter saw, but I could use a circular saw, and so could you. Now onto the build so you can see how I made them. The first step was cutting off the dog ears on 24 of the cedar pickets. I clamped down my miter saw and used the fence as a stop to make sure all of the cuts were the same length. Once again, I adjusted my miter saw and cut 24 36 inch long boards. I was only able to cut one 36 inch piece per picket. I used the remaining part of the picket for the 30 inch long pieces that I cut next. I once again adjusted my miter saw to make 30 inch long cuts. I cut 36 30 inch pieces for my garden boxes. I then grabbed 3 boards and laid them side by side to measure the height of my boxes. It came out to 16.5 inches. After adjusting my miter saw, I cut 24 16.5 inch long 2x4s to use as a support of my boxes. After we're done cutting, we'll have 24 6 foot long pickets, 24 3 foot long pickets, 36 2.5 foot long pickets, and 24 16.5 inch 2x4s. I set 2 2x4s on my work surface and measured 2 feet over from each side of the 6 foot long pickets. I then lined up the mark with the center of the 2x4s and used a 22 gauge nailer to pin the boards into place. I then lined up the next 2 boards and nailed them into place. Next, I placed 3 more pickets on top of the other pickets and screwed 2 inch long deck screws all the way through both layers of the pickets and into the 2x4s. I then repeated this 3 more times to make a total of 4 6 foot long sides. I repeated the previous steps for the 4 3 foot sides and the 4 2.5 foot sides. The only difference is that the 2x4s were placed on the edges of the pickets. The next step was assembling the boxes. I put a small offcut of wood under one of the corners to help make the edges even on the uneven ground. I then put 6 2.5 inch long deck screws in each corner to make the box. Next, I used a pocket hole jig to drill 6 holes on one of the 2x4s attached to the 3 foot long pickets. I then set up the 3 foot long section with the pocket holes and used 2.5 inch long deck screws to attach it to the previously assembled box. I next grabbed one of the loose 2.5 foot long boards and marked its distance on the 6 foot long box. I could have also used a tape measure and measured 2.5 feet over from the edge of the box and marked that. I then lined up the outside edge of one of the 3 foot long sections with the mark I just made. I then attached it to the previously assembled box by going through the inside of the box into the 2x4 connected to the 3 foot long section. I used my tape measure to make sure the distance at the top and the bottom of my box was the same. I then put in 5 more screws through the inside of my 6-foot long planter box to attach it to the 3-foot long section. Next, I grabbed one of the 2.5-foot long boards that I had not yet used. I lined it up and nailed it onto the open end of the 3-foot section. I repeated this with 2 more boards above it. In hindsight, I should have started at the top to assure that my top edge would be even. Next, I repeated the last step, but instead of using nails, I used 2.5-inch long screws to attach it to the 2x4s. I then repeated all of the assembly steps that I did previously to make the second box. And here are the boxes fully assembled. This project was super fun and in total took around 3.5 hours for me to complete. I hope you enjoyed, thanks for watching. And please subscribe for a new video every week. Bye!